Scott, welcome to the Fresh Fiction Video Book Club. I'm very excited to talk to you tonight because your settings for your series of books sounds delightful. So to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started writing?
Sure. This is being recorded. Okay, that'll be okay with my parole officer, I think. No issues there. We'll be good. How did I get started writing? I was a journalism major at the University of Texas, and I went into broadcast news and spent well over 30 years in broadcast news as a producer, working for affiliates for all four major networks. And came out of that with tellies and with one Emmy nomination, but did not win it. But as we say in the business, it's just an honor to have been nominated, said nobody ever. That left me into the writing mode, and all of my jobs since then have been in writing mode. And I always enjoyed the big ships and thought they were the greatest thing ever since I read a copy of A Night to Remember when I was in like sixth grade, which is, if you don't know, is the minute by minute Walter Lord story, The Sinking of the Titanic. So that's how I got into the writing stuff.
Okay, but what made you pick? Because look, you're in Texas and you went to Texas.
You're
We
right.
don't,
We're pretty short stocked on ocean liners in Texas, unless
yeah.
someone's hiding one out near Abilene somewhere that I don't know about. But again, it was just I fell in love with the shape of the ship, with the style of the ship, and then I found out that there were many other ships and not just the Titanic out there. So it was a big discovery for me. And I was in sixth grade and I continued to read and explore these things. Then went through college and everything else, and then came back to the idea of I really want to do a murder mystery and I really want to have a unique setting. And what is the thing I want to set it on? My own ship, the Queen Victoria, which is patterned very closely after the Queen Mary out at Long Beach. In fact, if you open the book, you'll see on the inside there will be a diagram
Mhm.
on the inside to let you know where you are on the ship because it's about 900 feet long and 13 stories tall. So you got to know where you're going. And the cast of characters who are on board the ship all the time. They stay. It's my ship's nurse, my ship's purser, and the ship's doctor are the primary characters. And then we have people just moving through the vessel. Each trip is someone different. So you can take on someone different. And I love history. So in my first book, Shadow of the Queen, my ship's nurse named Maeve Chandler. And if you wonder where she got her name, Maeve from Maeve, she explains it that her mother's name was Margaret and her grandmother's name was Eve. So you combined Margaret and Eve and you came up with Maeve. So that's her name. She's a war widow, World War II widow, a World War I widow, sorry. Her husband was not killed in the fighting, but was killed in the influenza epidemic of 1918, 1919. The stories are set 1929 forward, and the first book, my heroine encounters a man dying in the first class dining salon of a terrible choking death. And she has to run with the doctor to that table, but there's nothing they can do. And they're putting it off to the passengers as a stroke, but they all know it was poison instead. So they're trying to figure this one out. And Maeve is walking the sun deck the next day and putting her mind to it and bumps into a lady and they begin to talk together. And the lady says she was in the dining room last night and she saw what happened as well. And she enjoys solving mysteries. And you're trying to solve one. Can I help? It turns out this lady is Agatha Christie, who is on her way to meet her editor in New York. And I have researched that. And at this time period, yes, she was going back and forth between Great Britain and New York. So it's quite possible. It's a work of fiction, but what the heck, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So she and Maeve set off to solve the murders. And the second night out, an American millionaire goes missing. The next day, the American stock market collapses before he can be found. He's still missing. The day after that, while the doctor and nurse are delivering a baby in the ship's hospital, the baby's father is pushed down an open lift shaft, seven decks to his death. And then finally, there's a crewman in one of the boiler rooms who is injured and is pushed up against a boiler just to cook, basically. So now they've got a really vicious murderer on board the ship, and they have to find him before the ship reaches New York and docks. Because once they're in New York and dock, they got to turn around. They got to reprovision, turn around and go back. They've got a schedule to keep. So the murderer will likely walk right off the ship and into America and disappear. So they're always running against time. 2,900 suspects, and with every turn of the propeller, they're getting a little bit closer to not being able to get somebody.
So this is a locked room mystery because you're on a boat that can't get off of it. This is not a boat that stops.
Right.
Um, and what I mean, there's so many things that you've just said. I'm like, okay, so is it your love? You've got true, not fictional characters
Hmm.
mixed in with the fictional characters. So what made you do that? Are you a fan of Agatha Christie?
I am a Christie fan. I've actually been in a couple of her plays, Ten Little Indians and The Mousetrap. I was in both of those. Actually, I was the murderer's accomplice in one of them. Read her paperbacks as a boy in junior high school, read those and enjoyed them. So always had her at the back of my mind and enjoyed Poirot and all the other detectives. And in the conversations that Maeve has with Agatha, she mentions books that are out at the time. Oh, I just picked this book up for £7, 10 pence, or whatever, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And Agatha says, "Oh, that's one of my favorites too. I enjoyed writing that." So there's some interaction between the two of them. They become friends, and just having the historic character in the book alongside the book characters, I think is just a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed the kind of what if scenarios. So having the true to life person, I think it's just icing on the cake. And it's a lot of fun to research, and I enjoy doing that. The second book in the series, A Queen of Diamonds, you spoke of a locked room mystery. The ship is on its way to Cherbourg, France, with a group of diamond dealers on board who are going to a big show in Amsterdam. And this first day out, second day out, sorry, diamond dealer, an old man who is equally despised on both sides of the Atlantic, is found in his first class cabin, seated in an armchair, no sign of a struggle, his mouth and throat stuffed full of cut diamonds, and the door is locked from the inside. So Maeve is presented with that mystery. Fortunately for her, there's a young diamond dealer on board who has an interest in solving these crimes too, and his name is Harry Winston, and he will of course go on to be Harry Winston.
Good grief. Okay, so how restricted are you by using real life characters and trying to mix in what could have happened to them into the voyages back and forth of the Queen? How do
I
you do that?
I work with the real life characters as if they're one of my made up characters,
Mm.
but I'm always very careful to observe things. They're never going to do anything that would have been out of character with the real person. We're going to have Agatha's not going to get irritated with someone and stab them with a knitting needle. That's never going to happen. Always very kind and very gentle and very down to earth with the real life characters, but treating them as fictional characters, it works well within the plot itself. And the books are told from first person, from Maeve's point of view.
Yeah.
So again, I'm a man writing as a woman, and you have to go back to the old adage about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, that Ginger Rogers could do everything Fred Astaire did, except she did it backwards and wearing heels. My wife is
So
happy. It's been a real awakening for me.
I bet it has been. Okay. Now I would imagine this is sounding low. The lady, the series set in Maine or someplace where, oh gosh, forgot the name of it, where the little town, everybody's dying in it. So this is a boat where everybody's dying on it. That's be a scary thing. Are you just killing off mostly the first class passengers? Just,
No, I'm an equal opportunity murderer.
oh, okay. That's
I,
sad.
yeah, I killed off in Shadow of the Queen. A crewman was killed off, and the husband who got pushed down the lift shaft, you were ready for him to go and say goodbye to him. He was just a horrible character, and people have written me and saying, "I'm so glad he got it." So, not to give it away, but they were happy he went away.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that your characters you're making they're not loved. So some of them are not loved, and hopefully some of them are okay. It's like the red
Yes,
shirts in Star Trek.
exactly. Some of them are not loved, but some of them you do love. I would hope you would love Maeve. She's a very interesting person. Like I said, widowed, and she has a chemistry degree, being 19, 27, 28, 29. She was unable to find employment because she's a woman as a chemist.
Mhm.
So she took a nursing degree then instead and signed on board the Queen Victoria and has been on board that ship for 3 years at the time the series opens.
Yeah.
So,
So how, when they get to the other, okay, so when I was on the Queen Mary 2, the same day that they dock, they provision and they dock in the morning at 6 o'clock and they leave at 5 o'clock. Is that
mhm.
same, is that the same kind of turnaround that your Queen Victoria had?
The Victoria has about a 2 day turnaround
Ah,
for
okay, a
her,
little longer.
a little bit longer. She's a true, and maybe this is a good time to say there's the difference between a cruise ship and an ocean liner. The liner gets the word liner because it went in a straight line, Southampton to New York, back to Southampton. It was a method of transportation. Cruising is just going, around, and you come back to the same place you started, pretty much. So the cruise ships are also as very tall. They're towering things above the water. An ocean liner is squat and flat, much closer to the water to allow it to cleave through the water faster. It can go places that the you would never find a cruise liner like one of the Disney ones out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That would be suicide with the storms out there and the height of that ship. They're going to stick pretty close to land.
Yeah, I know. And it was very interesting because we went through the waves were
Hmm.
33 feet. No, it wasn't, yeah, 33. It was the size of 4 buildings and the
Yeah.
waves that we went through because we went through a storm on the way over. But it was not bad. Let me tell you, I did not get seasick. And I enjoyed watching the waves come up over because they would come up over if I was on deck number 2 or deck 3, which is where the food and the restaurants were, you would watch your window, your porthole or whatever would disappear because of the water, the wave. You knew you were under the wave, but I wasn't afraid. It was really fun. So I'm going to ask you about research. What kind of research have you done? Now, the Queen Mary, which you have based your ship on, is docked and rotting nicely in Long Beach. Have you gone to visit it? Have you, tell us a little bit about your research.
I have not been fortunate enough yet to visit the Queen Mary. It is docked there. It is on the National Historic Register, sitting there. But for research, there are any number of books around for that. I must have 30 to 40 research books that I just keep here. Plus, you can go online and verify things or see pictures maybe you hadn't seen elsewhere. So I was a reporter in broadcast
Mhm.
news. So research is very important to me, and getting it correctly is very important to me. And the writing is fun, but the research is a lot of fun. Just discovering things about the ships and about the people who were on them at the time. If you go to my website, which is voyagesofthequeen.com, you'll see who served on these ships. How were women treated? How did women serve on board these ships? What were the provisioning of victuals on board the ship? What did it carry? Basically, at that time period, the ocean liner was a small town. It was, with
Mhm.
passengers and crew, it was close to 4,000 people on board. And if someone got ill in the middle of the Atlantic, there was no big helicopter coming to get them like we have nowadays. They had a fully equipped surgical ward on board. So I will use myself as an example. About a week ago, 8 days ago, I had my appendix out. Yay, that was fun. Yeah.
Wow.
So if that had happened on board ship in 1929, 1930, then the ship's surgeon and nurse would have taken my appendix out at sea. There was nowhere else to go. That's part of the allure for me, is that they are, as you said earlier, locked room mystery, but the ship is trapped at sea. There's no one is coming in, no one's going out. It's a self-contained unit from the time it leaves to the time it arrives.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So that gives you I would say it gives you a lot of scope to do this. You've been giving 3 years, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay, 4 years if I count correctly. Um, you've done 2 voyages so far. Are you planning on more in the
I
series?
am. I am actually working on book three, and at the end of each book, there's a teaser chapter for the next
Mm,
series coming in. And book three, we all have heard the stories, and they're true, that if a smaller vessel or another vessel is in distress, they send a distress code, and whoever is closest diverts to go to them. It doesn't matter nationality or whatever you're doing. If you're
yes.
closest, you divert and you go. In book three, which is titled Queen of the Sky, the Queen Victoria gets a distress call from another vessel that they have a medical emergency on board that they cannot handle themselves. And so when they get to the coordinates of where the distress call came from, there's no ship in the water. Instead, floating about 200 feet above them is the German Graf Zeppelin, the airship. And yes,
Wow.
yeah, and they actually, and this was way before I had my fun, they actually have an appendicitis case on board. Very serious appendicitis case. They cannot do anything with it. Now, the patient also cannot be lowered down from the Zeppelin into a boat and ferried over to the Queen Victoria. He'd never make the trip. His appendix would burst. So my ship's doctor and nurse have to board the Zeppelin instead and go aboard. And they actually perform the surgery on a table in the small dining room of the Zeppelin. And once they're finished, they go to look out the window and check on their ship. Their ship is not down there anymore. And one of the German officers comes in and tells them, "Oh, yeah, you were busy. A weather inversion has come up. Your ship left, and we're going to have to leave as well because we can't stay for this, being rather fragile." So my doctor and nurse now have an appendicitis case that they're having to care for, and their ship is going that way, and the Zeppelin is going that way. And
No, this is not real history, right? They are not on the, oh my God, the humanity.
no, the Graf Zeppelin was the first of the Zeppelins.
Okay.
It did over 1 million air miles without incident. And in fact, it was on a flight when the Hindenburg exploded in 1937.
Yes.
And the Zeppelin, the Graf Zeppelin, completed its flight, and then was basically deflated and hung up in its hangar as a tourist attraction for the remaining few years of its life. But it had no accident at all, like the Hindenburg did. So the Hindenburg is not even mentioned in this. So
Oh, because that would be terrible. I
it
would be
would
so
be.
upset with you, Scott. That would be
No,
taking real life into fiction a little bit too far.
no, not doing
No.
that. But my nurse is changing back into her regular garb, and she happens to press her head to the glass and look down the length of the Zeppelin, and she can see some of the outboard motor nacelles turning the propellers. There's 5 of them turning the propellers. And she, just out of the corner of her eye, catches what she thinks. Was that a bird? Was that a box of tools? No, I think someone just dropped a body out of that engine nacelle. And so that's where we are right now.
Okay. So is she the angel of death? Is that what you're telling us? We've got Maeve, the angel of death.
That's fine.
Did she
Yeah,
have did she have any does she have any issues in her history up to then? She killed off her husband through the influenza of 1918, 1919, apparently. And now she's just, that's terrible. I
yeah. Well,
liked her.
yeah, her husband died due to natural causes. She was nursing him. He died. He was one of the millions.
So-called natural causes. Come on
Right,
now.
exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And Maeve just happens to be a magnet for things. You sit and wonder, and I did theater for a number of years as well, and improv theater. And what we worked with was something called willing suspension of belief. Because when you go and see a movie about the natural, a baseball game or something, and they play a baseball game in the movie, they're not playing the whole 9 innings, but you're willing to believe that they did because you saw the little clips of it. So you're willing to believe they played a full game. So in this, we have Maeve, who just is one of these people who just, maybe she happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's like Jessica Lange in Murder, She Wrote. There was always something happening to her, and why her? Why not the lady 2 houses down?
That's because she was the angel of death. That's
Yes,
why.
exactly,
Mrs. Fletcher.
exactly.
Miss Fletcher. Okay. Well, we're going to shift right now, and we're going to put you on the spot,
Okay.
and we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions. We're called them the Fresh Fiction Facts. And what you do is you don't have to think about them too much. You just tell us first thing off the top of your head. The first question I've got, because we're talking about traveling, is that what do you have to pack when you travel? What are must-haves for your packing?
Toiletries, of course, razor, toiletries, other things. I also like to have a very comfortable pair of walking shoes, some nice thick socks to go into said walking shoes, and then at least 2 dress shirts and 1 pair of dress slacks, excuse me, and a pair of dress shoes and socks, and a jacket, depending on the climate that I'm going to. I can go to Europe on 1 bag.
Do you have to take any snacks with you?
I do. I do like to take snacks with me, and usually they'll be like jawbreakers or something because my throat gets dry. So
Yeah.
I'll do something like that if I can get them past TSA. Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite genre to read as a reader?
It's got to be historic fiction. Anything set in a time period other than the period I'm living in right now, I'm happy to go to.
What is your favorite time of day to either read or write? Because I know you have a full-time job, so
Yes. My favorite time of the day to either read or write on Saturdays is pretty much all day long when I can. But in the evening, I like to read before I go to sleep. So I've always got a book with me to read before I fall asleep.
besides Agatha Christie, who was your first book boyfriend or book girlfriend?
Besides Agatha Christie.
Besides Agatha Christie, you can't pick her.
Gosh, let me think here a moment. You saying a real life person?
No, a
Oh,
character that when you were that you still remember, it's like the first one that you went, wow, yes, that's someone who
huh.
stuck with you.
Actually, I would say probably Tom Sawyer when I was a young boy. And of course, Huckleberry Finn. I read both of those and wanted to be Tom Sawyer, wanted to explore that cave and rescue Becky and to get away from Injun Joe.
Yeah, okay. And they have big rivers there, which we don't have in Texas.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I had a really great one there and I just lost it. Okay. What is one thing that could bring you instantly out of a book or a movie?
Um, Inaccuracy. So if I'm watching, I'll just make something up. If I'm watching The Untouchables, for instance, right? The Chicago Police Unit. Hello, Chicago. I know you're out there. The Chicago Police Unit, who was after Al Capone and his gangsters.
Yeah.
If I'm watching The Untouchables, and oh my God, I see in the background a sign for Hyundai's or something that kills it right there.
Yeah. Okay. So you had two releases this year. So what do you do to celebrate a new release?
Pop a cork, and my wife and I will share a bottle and go out to eat, go out to dinner, and that's pretty much it. It's Gabrielle, myself, and a dog, and three cats and a confused dog. That's our household here.
Yeah. Why is your dog confused?
She's not Gilly. Are you confused? Yes, she's a Husky Shepherd mix. The vet calls her a Shepsky, but she came home from the Dallas Humane Society with one of the cats on the same day. So she thinks she's a cat and she wants to lay around with the cats. But weighing 55 pounds, the cats are really not comfortable about her rolling over on them. To which we have to tell Gilly constantly, be careful with the cats. They're delicate. They're expensive to repair. Don't damage them.
Oh,
Mm.
so okay, that's interesting. That is interesting because my dog was, yeah, no, that they would just carry the cats around. So it's okay, you can do that. What is this? You've been in the business for a long time into writing and things like that. What is the advice that you would give to your younger self?
To my younger self. Probably it would have to be keep writing. You don't have to turn out perfection every time your pen touches paper, but you keep writing and just hone your craft. And the other thing is keep reading. Read. I enjoy listening to what all you guys are reading. I'm afraid I'm a little behind the curve. I just finished up A Gentleman in Moscow and also finished up the Pillars of the Earth trilogy. Uh, why can't I think of his name now? The writer, Ken
Pen
Follett.
Follett?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
finished that up. And right now, the book that's open on my bedside is a collection of short stories by the English humorist P.G. Wodehouse.
Oh, I love Woodhouse. Oh,
Yes, you love him,
I
right?
love Woodhouse. Yeah.
He's great. I'm reading some of the Mr. Mulliner stories right now, but that's also a go-to place for research because he was writing in the time period that I'm writing in. So
Mhm.
he's using words and things that were in the vernacular at the time.
Yeah.
So
And he's very famous for for actually recreating the world that he was living in at that
yes,
time. Yeah.
yes,
So,
exactly. Which makes it not only a fun read, but a research read. And some of his books are set on board ocean liners, which oh my
mhm.
God, it's Nirvana. I've got Bertie Wooster and Jeeves on board an ocean liner. What could be better? So
Yeah. In the 20s and 30s and up to World War II and stuff, that's how people got back and forth across the
mhm.
Atlantic is that they would take a liner, and that was very interesting. Okay, so my last question for you is, do you have a playlist while you're writing, or do you like silence?
No, I prefer a little background music. So I'll whisper because she'll talk to me. I will tell Alexa to play me something from the 1930s into the 1940s. And so Alexa just goes through and picks things, which I generally enjoy. Or if I'm in the mood, I'll say, play me some Glenn Miller, play me Count Basie, whatever. So that time period it talks to me. One of my hobbies is repairing old radios with tubes and big capacitors in them. I've repaired a friend of mine who was a producer for 60 Minutes on CBS presented me with a floor model Philco radio, which is a big cabinet model, tall thing.
Yeah.
And I rebuilt that for her. And as soon as I had it actually running, I have an aerial strung down the backyard. And as soon as I had it actually running, I was actually able to pick up a shortwave radio station out of Seattle. And here I am in Dallas, and I'm picking up some shortwave radio station from Seattle. So it worked like a charm. And I was happy to give it back to her, redid the finish on it and cabinet cloth and stuff because they're beautiful machines. They're absolutely beautiful
Yeah.
machines. And families gathered around them, so you have to treat them with some respect. Families heard about, oh my God, I've got a loved one, and I'm just hearing now the D-Day invasion is coming over this machine.
Yeah.
So, and then you also have to think, oh, people listen to Jack Benny and Abbott and Costello and Bing Crosby and Bob Hope on these
Mhm.
machines as well. So I diverged on that.
That's a very interesting thing. I think that you have that. We're going to close our recorded part, but before that, how can the readers stay in touch with you? I know you said what your website was before, but how is the best way for them to connect with
You
you?
can get me at voyagesofthequeen.com, and there on there, there's a place where you can send me an email directly from there. It's the radio room, the wireless room. You go to the wireless room on the website, and there's a space to send something to me, and it'll get to me. So that'd be great. Absolutely.
Scott, thank you very much for joining us here tonight. And we really appreciate you sticking around for a little bit longer for the readers to ask you some questions.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm enjoying myself. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.